What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 834. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, we're back, baby. Mostly healthy.
We had some ill-timed, illnesses and just holiday break stuff get in the way, and we just found ourselves not doing a show for 2 weeks, which wasn't intentional, but that's kind of how things kind of crumbled, or how the cookie crumbles.
Indeed.
But glad to be back. Glad to do some Limmies, and I had a sign off I wanted to do weeks ago that I haven't gotten a chance to do, so I'm excited for that too.
You're going to plant your flag early on sign off of the year, or sign off valuable contributor. All right, that's right. We've got the 2025 Limmies for you, where we look back on the year for us limited players and some of the highlights and lowlights and such, and we'll get a chance to discuss all of those today in a fun holiday themed episode that we like to do once a year. Before we do, we want to say thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. If you want to get a live behind the scenes look at us doing the show, all you got to do is be a Patreon supporter, any level there, and we actually put up a live stream that you can also watch after the fact, by the way. You'll get a link, and you can, even if you didn't happen to be around right when we went live, you can watch it, and you get to see a little bit of the pre-show nonsense and post-show as well. It's just one of the benefits you get for being a supporter of the show. We want to thank everybody who supports us. It's patreon.com/limited resources. We also want to say thank you to Ultimate Guard for supporting the show. They make the best stuff in the business when it comes to protecting your cards, your decks, and your collection. Magic cards are worth a bunch of money, right? And you save up your hard-earned dollars to buy them. You want to play with them in a deck, or you want to have a collection or whatever. You need to protect them. It's just a must to do so. So at the card level, sleeves, deck boxes, all the way up to binders, backpacks, and stuff to protect your whole collection. They've got it at Ultimate Guard. They make really good products, well thought out, well designed with premium materials, some really cool cross-branded stuff. You can find it all at ultimateguard.com to check out their full line of products. And if you want to buy something, you can get it at your favorite online retailer or local game store. Thank you, Ultimate Guard. We do appreciate your support of the show. And we've got another benefit you get if you're a Patreon supporter of ours is you get to submit questions for the Patreon question of the week. This one comes from Carl, who says, "Hey, Marshall and Luis, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time before switching to Magic a couple years ago. Many of the skills I learned in that time translated into Magic pretty easily, and I feel my abilities to plan and adapt are mostly solid at this point. Lately, I've been trying to really level up my Magic game, but I'm seeing that the biggest leak seems to be residual heuristics from Yu-Gi-Oh! Leading me astray, such as making decisions that would be clean in Yu-Gi-Oh! But are more sloppy in Magic. I've seen this especially once the game state gets above a certain complexity and heuristics start to really come into play. I've tried slowing down a bit, but I've seen mixed results, and I'm not sure if there's something else I'm missing. My situation is probably fairly unique, but I think my question can be good for everyone. How does someone rewrite or remove heuristics that are no longer beneficial? Thank you both for all you do." That's kind of a reverse, huh, Luis? We talk about heuristics a lot, and in the ways that they can be useful and in the ways that they cannot. But this is kind of interesting. Carl has this imprint, from a different game, and some of those heuristics are leading him astray. Have you ever had to look in the mirror and say, this thing that I do kind of automatically isn't working? How do I get rid of it?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think you have two. The most common one, and it's not quite the same situation here, but I think a lot of people can probably speak to this. Maybe they don't know what's going on. So this would be very useful for them to hear if so. When you draft a format a lot, if you like a deck at a higher rate than other people, you will end up in that deck a lot. So let me give you an example from Vintage Cube. Well, normal person. Oh, if I open a Tolarian Academy, maybe I'll draft Artifacts. Me. Oh, third pick Mox Opal? I guess Artifacts is open. And obviously I have a problem when it comes to Artifacts, but even in like a normal set, let's say in like Final Fantasy, you really like drafting the blue-red, four cost spells deck. If in your personal pick order, Sahagin is like a card you're happy first picking, and if you see one in third, you think it's open, you're going to draft that deck a lot more than other people. Likewise, if you're lower on a card than other people, you will rarely have that card in your deck because you're not going to second pick it, and other people will be happy to do so. So one of the things that I sometimes find myself having to do is take a little reset when I've drafted a bunch, especially when I'm just really jamming on a format, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I've drafted blue-red like 5 times in my last 8 drafts, but I don't think I should have. My results actually aren't like really that good. I think I've been drafting blue-red times when I shouldn't. You kind of have to do this like reset where you take a second to fight against your kind of instinct. And in that case, in the draft case, it's like, okay, stop. Before you first pick the Sahagin, should you really be doing this? Look at the pack. Is there a good white card? Maybe you should be drafting a different deck. It's totally fine to draft this deck. It's a good deck, but do it when you get a 5th pick Sahagin, or you open a Shantoto and then get a Choco Comet or whatever. I drafted a lot of Final Fantasy that came back, so all the card names are pretty very fresh in the head. But when it comes to heuristics, the thing that Carl's doing here is the first step. You've identified that you have some kind of bad heuristics or ones that aren't serving a good function. The second step is trying to do a reset. And yes, he even mentioned slowing down a bit. I think that's a good thing. Basically, in the times when you would use a heuristic, you sometimes have to check again and just try to make sure you're actually getting the right information, you're actually making the right play. And then as you keep doing that, it'll become more natural, and you don't have to do that. The other thing, like when it comes to the draft thing, sometimes I will just be like, okay, I'm just not going to draft blue-red for like the next couple of drafts, unless it's just forced down my throat, unless it's obviously this is the best thing to be doing. And that can kind of tilt the scale from I'm 40% to draft this deck to down to like 20% or 15% to give myself a broader range of experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up at like the draft level, because I'll tell you, I can feel myself starting to solidify those heuristics really early, like 3rd draft, 4th draft of the format. Especially given
one of the most injurious things you can do to your win rate is have a draft a bad archetype, but a good version of it in your second draft ever. Like you draft Black, White, Sacrifice, and Avatar, and you're like, whoa, this deck's amazing. And then you try to chase that dragon and you lose a bunch, and you don't realize you just had the Phoenix Fleet Airship. That was the only reason you won. So,
right, exactly.
And that actually almost happened to me, basically.
Did it? Yeah, I mean, it's happened to all of us at times. I mean, I
went 7-1 with the first Black, White deck I drafted because I had the Airship, and then the next 3 Black, White decks I drafted, I did badly. So yeah.
Right. And this is a common thing. I think for people in our position, Luis, where we're doing the podcast and, maybe have like Pro Tour related activities too, I feel a responsibility to make sure that I try out the different cards of different decks. So like I will snap myself out of it really early, but it's a forced move. Like I'm like, yes, I see the card that I know I like that I probably could take right here, probably could get the deck and even do well with it, which is a real temptation. Like winning feels good, right? And when I know it's just sitting right there and it's early enough in the format that people just don't know what's going on yet, and I figured something out, my temptation is to hammer it. Right. To just be like, I'm going to do this until they make me stop, basically. But that doesn't really work for trying to figure out a bunch of different archetypes and that type of stuff. Another thing, that you can do is watch other people draft. I get a lot out of our discussions, Luis, especially early in the format, where we'll come on and we'll start talking cards, and I'll get a sense for what you've been doing. Like, what have you latched onto? What do you like? And that'll give me a direction. I know a lot of people that listen to the podcast also listen partially for inspiration about where to, what to try out, in the coming sets. And then, from a very big picture perspective too, I think that's an interesting question about, how do you get rid of heuristics? For me, probably, I would say probably my biggest weakness at this point, just in Magic, playing Magic in general, is autopiloting. And, leaning on reasonably good heuristics is another way to say autopiloting, right? We've talked about it before, but, if you want to become a good Magic player, you need to be able to identify the generally speaking correct play, meaning that call it 80% of the time that play's the right thing to do. And if you want to become a really good player or really start to excel, you need to identify when it is actually not the time to make that, what we would call the standard play, right? To do the thing that you just kind of normally do when you curve out or whatever. And I mean, that's a perfect example of, if you're doing the 80% play all the time, you're a lot better than most players. Like many players don't know how to do that, or they don't recognize it, or they just do crazy or, fancy play stuff or whatever. And if you're doing kind of the solid play 80% of the time, your win rate's probably going to be pretty good. You're going to be better than most players at your local game store, that type of thing. But boy, are you leaving a lot of meat on the bone, right? If you're just autopiloting through and just going like, do the same thing every time, you stick to the same heuristic. So I definitely can understand where Carl's coming from with wanting to rewrite those. And I mean, for me, it's not that, it's one of those problems that's not complicated, but it's hard. It's simple, but difficult, right? Which is like, you have to stop. You have to stop yourself constantly and say, why am I doing the thing I'm doing? And start to rebuild those pathways so that you can, give yourself a better chance.
The times when I play my worst, that when I think I'm in the worst, like my lowest win rate, like periods of time, are when I'm playing enough that I'm trusting my intuition and heuristics, but not enough that they're accurate. Like
exactly.
That's a really dangerous spot. Because if I haven't played in a while, I will examine things and be a little slower. And if I played a ton, then I think that's when I'm very good. But when I played it, there's like a danger zone. It's kind of like the food temp danger zone, right? It's when it's in between too hot and too cold. And
totally.
It's like, when I'm in that zone, especially if I'm autopiloting a little bit more than I need to, I just end up in a spot where I'm like, I'm making plays without thinking and they're bad, as opposed to making plays without thinking and they're good, or thinking about my plays more and making reasonable ones.
Right. Because that you at your peak is when you have that you've put in the work on the format, and now you can rely on that intuition. I mean, this is why like Luis has a reputation for being one of the fastest players on the Pro Tour, right? One of the players who's just bang, 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 bang. That's the times when you've really laid that groundwork down, and now you just get to go out there and go. But yeah, if you haven't yet, or if you've even worse, like you said, put in some amount of work, that can be the worst. Great question, Carl. Thanks for that. Lots of stuff to talk about for the Limmies this year, Luis. If this is your first time with us for the Limmies, we just use this as kind of our end of year award show, but really it's a jumping board for us to talk about all the things that happened over the course of the year and kind of look back at the limited formats and things that happened over the course of the year. The sets that came out, by the way, just as a kind of a recap, Aetherdrift came out way back at the beginning of the year. Then it was Tarkir Dragonstorm, Final Fantasy, Edge of Eternities, Marvel, Spider-Man, and then we finish up the year with Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think one of the big things that will come up over the course of the conversation, and definitely will for 2026 when we get to the end of the year as well, are the Universes Beyond sets, right? When you look at these, you've got Aetherdrift and Dragonstorm. It's like, okay. And then it was like, ooh, Final Fantasy. Then we went out into space, and then it was Spider-Man and Avatar: The Last Airbender, which were both versions of Universes Beyond. And next year, it's going to be even more so. What is there? 7 sets, and I think 4 of them are
four Universes Beyond, 3 in universe sets. But,
so that's a lot.
Yeah, but I am actually not a Universes Beyond hater.
No, I'm not either.
I don't like it when they're done poorly, like Spider-Man. We'll talk about that one for sure. But my 2 favorite sets of the year, Final Fantasy and Avatar, both Universes Beyond, and Final Fantasy is not even an IP that I have really any attachment to.
Totally. So yeah, I'm sold on Universes Beyond. I think it's a really, I think when done properly, it's right up there with the best stuff. If you gave me the choice, I still would. I like the idea of them continuing to develop their own IP. Like, they've come up with some really interesting, cool stuff. I've never been into the storyline still. Like, I think Avatar is probably the only set I've ever really understood, been able to translate that part of storyline to cards and seeing how cards play out.
Yeah.
But that was a near miss because I didn't watch it until you told me to, so.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For someone who is entrenched in Magic, does a Magic podcast, does Magic coverage, has been a YouTuber / podcaster for forever, you consume very little kind of like media in this realm. Like you're not into a lot of like, I don't know, nerd media, whatever you want to call it, fantasy, sci-fi, like that's not your cup of tea. And I'm not making an argument about who's a real gamer. That's absolutely the last thing I want to do, but you are not a gamer in the sense, like you don't play a bunch of games.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not a real gamer.
You play Magic.
I'm not.
Play poker.
Like, you can gatekeep me.
Yeah.
Like I found a few things that I really like, and in fact love and have become like part of my being in some way. But like, if you were like, hey, do you want to come over and try out this cool new board game I got? I would be like, there's just literally nothing I'd rather do. You goddamn nerd, how dare you? I do not want to do that.
I mean, like if you even look at your hobbies, you like watches, you like basketball, you like poker, these are not, they can be game adjacent, of course, but like it's just, I just find it funny that you're like, yeah, I didn't know too many of the universes beyond IPs. I'm like, yeah, of course you didn't.
Yeah, that's when they
until
make
they
the
do
Wire,
Rolex universes beyond. The Wire.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Wire,
I know, man, so sad. We actually lost 2 Wire actors in the past few weeks. Ziggy died too.
I know.
Yeah,
super sad. It's a shame. What a great show.
Isaiah Whitlock passed away. He played
the Honorable Clay Davis, the dishonorable Clay Davis.
He played such a slime ball, but he did it so well. So R.I.P. to both of them. All right, so let's get back into it. So we have a whole bunch of different topics that we like to do for this. Some of them are specific to us or the show, and some of them are bigger picture. The first one is, in fact, specific to us. It's the worst grade of the year. And we have, I'm glad you remembered the second one here, Luis. The first one, I think it follows a pattern, right? Which is this type of card is normally mediocre, whatever. But when they build them right or change them just enough, all of a sudden they become really good. And that's Dragonstorm Globe.
And so the reason I chose this one as worst grade of the year isn't because it's worse than the honorable mention, which is from the same set, actually. But it's because this fundamentally was the archetype that the format was built around. And this actually wasn't the most important card in the archetype, but it was a good one, and it was important. Really good. And, it sounds like you're describing heuristics gone wrong, where when a good version of a bad card shows up.
Yes, that's exactly what this is. If you remember, this is the 3-mana artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color. And I can like hear our audience just go, oh yeah, we know that card. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen these 3-mana mana rocks.
How many times have we seen Manalith or Mana Rock or whatever? We've probably seen 10 of those in the last 10 years or something like that.
And they've all been bad. Yeah. And this one has an even worse sounding thing, which is each dragon you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, which I still read it and I'm just like, because we need our dragons to be better. Like, they made dragons good. It's not like, spending a card worth just to make my dragon marginally better is worth it. But this was, of course, the dragon set. This was the dragoniest of all sets. And, there was dragons represented at every rarity. And that meant that you could have a lot of them in your deck. You could splash around, have a bunch of different colors. And this thing actually mattered.
Yeah, no, it really got the job done and gave you a pretty big edge in the mirror. So Dragonstorm Globe, with the honorable mention being Mardu Devotee, which that was kind of a self-own. I think we both knew at the time we were even saying it that we were going to be wrong. Like, we've done a couple like that where it's like, oh, really? Yeah, no, this doesn't look that good. It's like, but these things are like always good. 1 mana creatures that have multiple abilities and like smooth out the game. This is 1 mana 1/2 scry 2 on ETB, and then it filters mana, and it just was good enough. It was a good card, and
it ended up having a really nice win rate in the format too, as kind of the one card that like where most people were playing fairly slow, but if somebody let off with Mardu Devotee, you're screwed. Like, that's the beginning of very. Part of the problem with that format is it was a dual decks, 5-color dragons versus red-white aggro. Like, that was basically the 2 decks. So that's right. I don't know, Luis. Hungriest co-host?
This one might be like we
I'm
might
pretty
be like
hungry this year, dude.
I was going to say we might be swapping this one. I would actually be willing to give this one to you this year.
I think so.
I think we have to.
I think you're relegated to honorable mention for hungriest co-host this year.
But it's with much regret that the next category I will never win unless something catastrophic happens, which is tallest co-host. Well, that goes to you still. I honest to God, I hope I never win this one, because that either means we replaced you with a much shorter co-host, or
some accident, or I'm just not
touring the Rolex factory and got caught in one of their motions or whatever you call those things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was working on a watch and there was a terrible accident. Yeah. This one's always hotly contested, but I think this is pretty clear this year. Most valuable contributor guess. It has been a duel between Sirkovitz and TBS, but Paul?
Yeah, we got to give it to Cheon this
Freaking
time.
Paul.
Part of it is that Cheon, is now back fully in the swing of playing limited Magic all the time. He plays more current set draft than either of us. I would say for most sets, because
I play a ton, but he plays more.
Oh, you play a ton. On the sets I like, I completely go crazy too. But Paul's bread and butter for his YouTube channel is a daily draft of the current set. So that's going to be pretty hard to fight against. And it just means he's got great insights. I mean, Paul's always someone when he's playing, when he's practiced, he doesn't listen to the show, right?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, we're safe.
No, I think he only listens to the set review, so you're good.
Okay, yeah. I was just because I'm just going to say a bunch of nice stuff about Paul, and I it'd be brutal if I knew he was just in there listening to it. He's just, he's an elite player when he is fully up to speed, and I still maintain that he's one of the best players to ever not have a Pro Tour top 8. So, especially if people who more recently have encountered Paul, they'll know him as a commentator, they'll know him as a streamer, they know him from the YouTube videos. Like, he's got legit chops and accomplishments. It just was a long time ago because that's when he played on the Pro Tour. But
right.
He knows what he's talking about, and having his insight on the show has been awesome.
And also, I mean, he was extremely important in 2025 because he filled in for you when the Twins came. We had him. Yeah, he was what, totally 2.5 months or something?
That's a pretty significant portion of the year.
Yeah. So congrats, Paul. We know you're not listening. What about, this is an interesting one. Most valuable contributor sign-offs. Now, Luis obviously would be the leader for this, but we're giving it to producer Jeff this time from the top rope.
Jeff not only has earned it, I also am not eligible to win this award because it's more like who has led to the most sweet sign-offs. And for quite a while, it was a toss-up between Ben and Shahar, but good Lord, don't look at what Shahar's up to these days. And, producer Jeff has really stepped up. So I think this is an easy win here.
And this is also Twins related too, because when Luis has the Twins around, they get sick, they need, stuff happens. And if Luis has to run off a little early, then it's like, what are we going to do for the sign off? And producer Jeff has just come in crushing it with like spice bag recommendations, reviews of television shows. Producer Jeff, he just does it all for us.
Oh yeah, I multiple times I've sent you guys that like Reddit posts of someone's like, I tried my first spice bag thanks to Jeff. So that's you can't say he hasn't earned it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of wonder if producer Jeff I picture him just out of school and he's like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make a difference. And did he know that recommending spice bags was going to be his calling?
Okay, I'm going to commit to this. This year, I will make a spice bag. I'll send you guys a picture of it.
Oh, love that! I love that.
I'll make all of it myself, though.
Producer Jeff, are you there? You can chime in with this on this one if you if you have anything to say. He's around, although.
I am here. I'm delighted. Thank you so much. This is the greatest honor I've ever received in my life. And I look wholeheartedly forward to seeing your spice bag, Luis. Let me know if you need any help, recommendations, recipes.
I was going to follow up with what you just need to give me the recommendation of what is in your favorite spice bag, and I will do my best to recreate.
Sure, yeah. I'll dig up some recipes and send them over your way. But I can't, because you're like a great cook from what I can see. So I'm really.
Luis knows how to do it. Yeah, he's going to come up with a real spice bag. I'll tell you that. Well, congrats, producer Jeff, and thanks for all you do for the show, of course, as always. Most valuable episode of the year.
For my money, LR 827. So actually a pretty recent episode, just a couple months old here. Diving into Arena Powered Cube. And the reason I say this episode is because this episode was intended, and I think did serve its function as a gateway for people to get into Arena Cube as it's becoming a little more accessible because the Arena platform is more accessible. In fact, we're getting Arena Cube back in just a couple days here, I believe. So I really, that one of my favorite things of the entire year, and this is a good jumping off point to talk about it, is that they put the Powered Cube on Arena and got to spread the word of how fun Powered Cube is, how unbelievably fun and entertaining it is.
According to Luis. I mean,
I'm not a religious person, but if there's anything approaching it, Cube is it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a game changer. We've only had that one run with it so far, but we anticipate it coming back frequently. It seemed to be successful. I
think it was pretty successful.
But it felt that way. The Q's fired, as you said. So that to me,
I can tell you from my end of like looking at how interested people were in those Arena Cube videos. There was a lot of people watching those and commenting on those who weren't in the normal rotation just because they got much more engagement. There's new people coming in to play Cube. It's awesome.
Totally. Yeah, we've got that actually in another category here as well, the powered cube. The one thing I am curious about, Luis, is I wonder what I have a good sense for what the flow was like on the Magic Online cube. Like there would be an article that would come out and it would tell you about the changes and all of that. I wonder if we're getting anything similar for the Arena Cube. Are you aware of this?
I imagine they will probably put out some sort of article talking about it or the changes they make. And I also imagine that they will have done what they can to either tone down Boros or tone up some of the other decks. I put out a video solving it, so hopefully they watched it.
You did, yeah. So that would be good. But yeah, that all eyes are on Boros when it comes to that cube. I think that this is, I don't want to judge them too much for the first few iterations because it does take a while to kind of get the flow of it going. But I am curious to see how much they react to what we saw from Boros, the numbers and the vibe in the cube as well, which
I don't think anyone really has issue with things not being balanced the first time out.
No,
I think if Boros was as unbalanced if Boros is as unbalanced in the second iteration, that I think is a failure of imagination on their part or failure of effort or both. So I do expect there to be changes because now that it's just right in front of you, the stats and the sentiment both line up. So I think it's just a windmill slam to correct things there.
That's right. So, and you can check out that episode 827, What Actually Matters in Arena Powered Cube. What were some of the biggest storylines of the year for limited and limited players? I mean, there was a lot. This was a big year for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's they announced the limited championship, which I think that was received with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. That's like a huge Pro Tour level tournament with that much of a prize.
Yeah, you wouldn't be too far off if you just called it a limited Pro Tour. I mean, it's
basically an all limited Pro Tour, which I'm one of the few people at this point who've played in one of those. And,
2007 was the last one.
Yeah, the one Finkel won, Kuala Lumpur.
So it's been a long time now, since we've had that. So that was a big one. I mean, one of the biggest, like if I were to distill down the entire year, in a few things, honestly, there would be highs and lows, both related to Universes Beyond. I'm really partial to Avatar: The Last Airbender, but from a storyline perspective, Final Fantasy, I mean, that's the most successful set we've ever seen for Magic. I mean, it was nonsense, just crazy, right? It just checked every box. Commercial, the fans loved it. The Final Fantasy people loved it. Magic people loved it. And we as limited players loved it too. It really did just go top to bottom as like, it is now the archetype, right? Like now that's the thing. I'm sure every eyeball in Wizards of the Coast is going, can we repeat that? Because that was just an absolute unmitigated home run. And the question I have for you, Luis, is, are there more IPs that line up the way that Final Fantasy did with the Magic community, with the gaming community, etc., that they can do this with?
Well, it's hard to say. The short answer is yes, I believe there are, because I think the success of Final Fantasy is not just the IP, clearly, because I don't think Spider-Man's a weak IP or Marvel's a weak IP, but I think there's a lot of different things. And one of the really cool things about both Final Fantasy and Avatar being successful is they actually approach Universes Beyond from a very different perspective, because Avatar is a self-contained story, and the Avatar Universes Beyond set kind of just told that story. It's one story. You can see a through line, right? You see Aang go from mono white to blue white green to four colors, and you can see Zuko evolve.
Journey, if you will, yeah.
And basically, Final Fantasy has Avatar has a very tight, cohesive story, right? Like it was one of those shows that was clearly they planned every beat from the beginning, and things that were happening in episode 3 were relevant in the last episode, and they set those up and they knew that was coming. It was not a, Lost-esque, like, laying down the railroad track before the train's coming sort of deal. And Final Fantasy was like almost the complete opposite, because Final Fantasy isn't that. Final Fantasy is a collection of games that have very little to do with each other, except that they're just called the same thing. I know there's some of the games are in the same universes. There's a little overlap, whatever. But the vast majority of the Final Fantasy set, it just reflects what the games are, which is a bunch of different cool games with no through line connecting them. And Final Fantasy it was basically just, here's Final Fantasy's greatest hits. Here's all the characters that we think are cool. Here's some moments that we think are cool, immortalized on cards and all that. And they both work really well. And I think the thing that tied them together is they were really fun. At the end of it, Magic is a game. And if the game isn't fun, you are failing. And a lot of the complaints really boil down to, this isn't fun enough. I actually remember, one of the challenging things with games is trying to capture people's sentiment with surveys and you talk to them and all that. And you send out all those surveys. And a lot of times what happens is people who are playing less, let's say Magic, will say a bunch of different reasons. But the real reason underpinning all of them, they might not even be aware of, they are less fun. It's like, oh, my friends aren't playing as much. Oh, it's too expensive. And the answer is, it's not that Magic got more expensive, or maybe that your friends in mass stopped playing. It's that it's less fun. Now it's not worth it. It's less fun. Now fewer of your friends want to go play it. And at the end of the day, I think Final Fantasy and Avatar are both really, really fun card sets to play, cards. They nailed it on flavor. That really matters too. For the fans of those IPs, getting to see faithful reproductions in Magic form is perfect. That's the good use case for Universes Beyond. So you look at that, and I'm sure all eyes at Wizards are like, how do we recreate Final Fantasy? How do we recreate Avatar? How do we not recreate Spider-Man? Because that's the flip side. That's the other big story of the year.
Exactly.
Is the Spider-Man set. I don't want to talk financially because I'm sure it did gangbusters, because all the sets do. But that's A, not the whole story, and B, a bad set costs you money in the future more than in the present, because the last 3 sets are all bangers. Set number 4 is not. People buy it as if it were, because the last bunch of sets were great and they love Magic, and then they're very disappointed, and then maybe set 5, 6, 7 are the ones that pay the price. So it's actually really hard to figure that out. That said, I would be surprised if the internal teams who are like on Spider-Man or as they're doing their postmortems and looking at this are like, yeah, Spider-Man is a success. It was pretty universally hated on social media. The chatter was really negative, and that does matter. Like the people at Wizards understand that, and they have their ears to the ground to some degree. And I'm sure everyone talking about how bad Spider-Man was not good for them. And I don't know if they'd call it a success. I'd be curious. I hope they don't, because that's a pretty grim depiction of what's going on. But you look at Spider-Man, and it had all these things kind of wrong with it. And it, I think, was a lesson of like, don't change development goals very, so late in the process, where it's like, oh, this isn't a 50 card set, it's an 180 card set. Now it's draftable. We're trying a new draft format, 4-player draft. We've got this Through the Omen Pass thing. And that's one I've got my eye on, because we're seeing another Marvel set this year. Is that going to have a Through the Omen Path treatment? Probably. I would imagine the Marvel Snaps position hasn't changed, which we're assuming it's that. We don't have any confirmation, but that seems like the most likely clause, is that they just have a, they get to have an exclusivity clause that Marvel's not making more digital Marvel cards. And if so, I better hope they do a better job of it, because it was really poorly done for Spider-Man, and the set was, I think, a pretty big flop for a lot of the things people look for in Magic sets.
Yeah, and especially for us limited players, right? It's interesting because we often try to put ourselves in the shoes of Wizards of the Coast, and I think that's a worthy exercise to do. We don't take it too far on the podcast, because ultimately we are consumers of this. We are paying our actual money to play these things. So we don't have to make excuses about why something's good or bad. If we don't like it, we just don't like it. And, we let that show with the way that we handled the Spider-Man set, and that we gave it, very little attention compared to a normal set. But at the same time, it is worth noting things like, they did the pick 2 format for Spider-Man. And I'm curious about, I feel like that wasn't a good test of that format, because, my understanding is that is more or less a limited format, a draft format aimed at Commander players, basically imagine 4 commander players sitting around a table. You don't really get 8-player commander games, but 4 is the most common. And what if they want to try something a little different, or what if they want to do a quick draft before they get their commander game going for the night or whatever? Because, there's no reason that commander players wouldn't enjoy limited just like we do. But the problem is that, you need 6 or 8 people to do a draft. So they came up with one that's 4. So now it's like, hey, we can try this out in our commander group, right? And that's pretty cool. But they tried it out on a set, that was an afterthought after an afterthought, right? It just seemed like it was backburnered. It was compromised. I don't know the politics behind it, but, we've made assumptions about, what they were allowed to do and what they weren't, and for the reasons, even though, we don't really know. But bottom line is that set was not great. And so if this was going to be your shot at this, where you're like trying to sell this to commander players and say, hey, you should try out draft, check this out, and you give them this pick 2 format in a format that's, got basically 5 archetypes or whatever, like that's not good. And I want to know if that type of drafting, for example, is good. So you lose those type of things. And then going to what you said, Luis, it had to have a shorter tail than a normal set, right? Like people just were not playing that at the level that they do, these other sets. So yeah, biggest storylines of the year. I think for limited players, there's definitely a lot of really cool things with the Arena Championship the Limited Championship, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. But my takeaways were around Universes Beyond, and I really feel that we got a chance to see both the highs and the lows from what that type of set can give us. And overall, I take away optimism from it. I mean, it does kind of feel like they got handed a really tough problem with this Spider-Man set. And they mitigated it in some way, but it ended up feeling that way on the other end of it. But maybe future ones won't have those lockdowns quite as much.
And look, one of the positives I take away is game design still takes skill. And when you have fewer resources, when you have to change midstream, that does not put you in a good position to be able to make the best decisions or do the things you maybe want to do. So I'm not even saying that the team working on it wasn't good. I'm just saying game design is a tough thing to do right. And the more obstacles thrown in your path, the worse you're going to do. And it does matter. The decisions do matter. It's not like you just, can crank out 7 sets a year, 10 sets a year and have them all be good. And maybe this gives them a little pause on omen paths or this number of sets. Probably not realistically, but if they do a better job on them, at least I'll be a little happier.
Yeah, it's interesting, Luis, to put ourselves in what is ultimately, let's say you and I are the ones in charge at Wizards of the Coast. Remember, Wizards of the Coast is owned by Hasbro, which is a publicly owned company. So, relatively short-term profits are very, that is the driver at companies like that. You cannot exist at a company like that and just say, we're just going to pass up on making a bunch of money. We could, but we're just not going to do it. You need to have really good reasons to not do that. And I wonder if Marvel comes to you and I, Luis, and says, hey, we want to do this collab, but online presence is going to be virtually zero. And we want it at this specific time, which means you can't do the normal full set and you're going to have to make all these compromises. If we would take it, because Spider-Man's one of the biggest IPs out there, for this space. So it's like, I don't know. You look at your job on the line and you start to really wonder if you would also have said, yeah, let's just go forward with it, even though we know this product isn't really up to our normal standards. What was the best card name of
Nutrient Block? I love the Nutrient Block. It's just one of my favorite cards. It's just so flavorful, or actually lack of flavorful.
Yeah.
It is perfect concept. It's just great. It's from Edge of Eternities. It's the indestructible food. It's meant stale. To be, it's meant to be that basically MRE that they eat in space. And it's like, and the fact that I eat something very close to it on not a day-to-day basis, but I'd say a couple times a week. I have a little meal square, which is just a concession to time, really, more than anything else. So,
do you call it your Nutrient Block?
Oh, I call it Nutrient Block all the time.
That's amazing. What was the sweetest build-around from 2020?
My favorite was probably Iroh Grand Lotus. It was the combination of a lot of things I like. First of all, my favorite character in the whole universe. So I really like Iroh is just my favorite character in Avatar. That's part of it. The other thing is it's a 3-color expensive build around that lets you play all your spells out of your graveyard. Yeah, that sounds like a thing I would like. Yeah. And then what deck does it push you to draft? Well, the deck with tons of card draw, with tons of removal, maybe some ways to fix your mana, and it just, you wrap it all up, and Iroh Grand Lotus is where I want to be.
Yeah, the Iroh was absolutely top tier. What about the most disappointing build around?
This is also one that is the, I always have to read it award. It's Sothera, the Super Void. That's the one from Edge of Eternities that's like, whenever one of your creatures dies, they exile one of their creatures. And then if there's no creatures in play at the end of the turn, the Sothera goes away, and you get to put a creature exiled with it into play with some plus counters. Sounds powerful, looks like a build around. You make a sack deck. The experience playing it was way too finicky, and basically just it had too high a fail rate. It could be really powerful sometimes. Most of the time it just wasn't, and that's just a disappointing build around at the end of the day, especially for like a really cool mythic.
Yeah, serious, and the right price, like that 4 mana slots. Just like you really expect this thing to be absurd, but it didn't quite fit. I do wonder if there's other
Whenever
formats.
You say the right price, I think of Happy Gilmore. The price is wrong when he's fighting Bob Barker.
Punches him, yeah. What was the Swedish archetype?
So both the Swedish archetype and the runner-up were both from the same set. Final Fantasy sweeps it here with the blue-red 4-mana spells matter. And part of the reason that we chose to award this here is when we looked at this before the set came out, it was like, excuse me, 4-mana spells matter? This seems like clunky and bad, and like, is this really going to work out? And then it worked out really well. It actually played really smoothly, was a very draftable and strong archetype. It was when you could draft all commons and still be pretty happy. You have a bunch of like thunder and ice magics and Sahagins, and you're just like kind of doing your thing. And there was some good uncommon support and some good rare support. So really fun. The runner-up didn't come together often enough, but the Wizards deck, where you try to accumulate as many of the 0-1 black wizards that ping for 1, black-red was like kind of anomaly of the color, but you could do blue-black, as well. Really fun. If you just get to like Circle of Power, draw 2 cards, your wizards all gain lifelink, you play
cornered by black mages. Let's go.
You played instant ramen. Yeah, I when during the flashback, one of the drafts I put on the channel had 5 cornered by mages. It was awesome. It's just like, you're just like, yep. And the only reason this didn't get as high of a, or get ultimately win the award, I think, is that it just, as fun as it was to get this critical mass, it happened a lot less often. So you just didn't have the experience as much as you wanted to.
I'm still blown away by how much I liked the 0-1 wizard tokens.
I know.
Just they look kind of throwaway-ish. They look like they would like maybe get a damage in and then chump block or something. And they are just absolutely a game plan. They're worth something that rounds up to a card. Like, they were so sweet. I mean, and the funny part is, like, Cornered by Black Mages is the card that I think of when I think of that archetype. And that is still a card that, like, I would have a hard time selling somebody on, right? Like, 3 mana Edict that's double black, right? So that's like really hard to cast. And Edicts, on turn 1 are really good, which is why they don't make them. Turn 2, they're passable. And anything past that, if they don't have some type of, clause about getting the thing with the highest powers, some selector, they're usually just bad. Sorcery speed, of course. And then they're like, here, I'll throw you a wizard token. And I'm supposed to be happy about that. And that ended up being one of my favorite comments of the year, honestly. I mean, I loved Cornered by Black Mages. And it's funny because it's like the reverse of the, when I read it, I still think it looks good, but it just doesn't perform. This is the opposite. Yeah. I'm just like, this card looks terrible. And it's just really good.
Well, 1/0 mage, not a big deal. As soon as 2 hit the board, you just like, you feel it. You're like, oh, I got to do something about this.
Exactly. And then, the dream is when they start using their removal on your 0-1s, and you're just like, that feels better than beating them with them.
Oh, yeah.
What was the worst archetype?
So this was a tie, and it's green-white +1/+1 counters / green-black graveyard, though sometimes green-black is the +1/+1 counters as well. Yeah. And it's not even across one set. It's across basically all the sets. If you actually went for this one, I went back and looked at their stated draft archetypes, and it was like always green-white counters, green-black graveyard, green-white counters, green-black graveyard. Oh, green-black counters. Uh-huh. It just doesn't work. It's horrible. They need to either be doing something different in this or stop doing it and figure out a different thing for these colors to do. Because, look, red-white aggro is the base red-white archetype. Also, like, not the most, thrilling, but at least it generally is functional. I think the green-white counters and green-black graveyard things just really don't function that well. And it's actually a shame, especially for the graveyard one. Graveyard decks can be really fun. Some good self-mill, use your graveyard as a resource, all that. I just feel like these are just consistently on the bottom of, like, you shouldn't draft this. When you do draft it, it's not that good. And it's just, I would say that these, if you're looking at things to improve in 2026, if you're a Magic designer, these archetypes, I think, could use a shot in the arm.
Yeah, the only graveyard strategies that we've seen work are when you get mill attached to cards that you would have played anyway. And what it feels like is when they push these ones, they make cards that are specifically graveyard, like mill cards. And it's like, you can't put that in your deck, right? You cannot in Modern Era Limited put in these cards that are purely enablers when other archetypes get to play cards that they don't have to pay that tax, right? Because, I mean, now you're talking about setup costs, you're talking about speed being too slow, and it all compounds. I do hope that they get that. I get it when there's a really niche kind of weird archetype that's hard to make happen, but Graveyard is like, that's pretty basic at this point, right? Like, Graveyard is a resource. I mean, look at Cube, right? Like, try to ignore Graveyards in Cube and see how that goes for you, right? We know what Graveyards can do, and getting that to work would be really, really good. The best Man Award winner goes to, there was two that came to mind straight away. The first one was Invasion Submersible, because it's really good, really, really good. And it has it feels a lot like a 3/3 Mana War. And sometimes it has upside. The first time that I cast it and realized that I could tap it as part of the cost, I was like, oh my God, like, this is even better. I was in for it before I realized that. And playing with that extra thing just meant it really just had exhaust 2 is what it feels like. And that card was really good. But I think the best one of the year was Jill Shiva's Dominant, which was also from Final Fantasy, by the way. And that one was a straight up Mana War, right? 2 and a blue, 2/2, return one other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So, like, strictly better. And then also had the transformability and, turned into a 4/5.
Flipped into and then it could reset and just do the whole thing. And then it'd
do it again. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Jill Shiva's Dominant certainly was. And it certainly wins the award.
Goated. Let's do this one last, actually. I put one in here, but I want to do it a little later than I have it on here. All right. I'm going to give you options here, Luis. Okay. Mythic. And by the way, Jill's are rare, and that's relevant to this. Mythic Uncommon of the Year. A few that stood out from the sets that we've had. Thundering Broodwagon. Remember that? Somehow that thing went nuts. Sonic Shrieker. If you remember that, the triple colored dragon.
Yeah, the Mardu dragon.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Dubious Delicacy. That was the food that killed something at instant speed. Dragoon's Lance and Summon Fenrir, both from Final Fantasy, were kind of top of the heap as far as uncommons. I mean, Dragoon's Lance was like the kind of maybe a little like more straightforward, maybe boring, but very effective, where Summon Fenrir was kind of for those of us with a little bit of style. Invasion Submersible, right? I mean, it's an uncommon. Like, it's in the discussion with Jill Shiva's Dominant, yet there's a rarity jump there, so that was really good. Aang the Last Airbender. It's one of my favorite uncommons, and it was also super good. What do you think? What do you like?
I think looking at all these, I think I have to fold to Big Bounce and the powerful Mana War lobby. I think that Invasion Submersible just was ultimately the best of all these. The thing about Invasion Submersible, it has asked absolutely nothing of you. It costs 2 and a blue. It's cheap. It's single color. Your deck doesn't have to be doing anything. Whereas like Thundering Broodwagon's double green, double blacks, Sonic Shrieker's Mardu, granted in a format that's not the most unapproachable, and like Dragoon's Lance, so much of the power of Dragoon's Lance is when you play it on turn 2. Yeah. It is good in the late game. It is a very good uncommon. I'm not taking anything away from it, but like Summon Fenrir are the same. Playing it on curve, really, really good. Playing it off curve, not as good. Whereas Invasion Submersible at any point in the game, fantastic. So Mythic Uncommon of the Year. It got snubbed in the Best Man Award, but it picked it up in the Mythic Uncommon of the Year.
Yeah, good job, Invasion Submersible. talk about some of the biggest wins and losses of the year. So biggest win of the year for limited players. I would say the 2026 Limited Championship is high on my list, as well as getting the Powered Cube on Arena. We touched on both of these, but these were two kind of non-set related highlights for me that really showed a devotion to Limited from Wizards of the Coast, which is exciting and relieving, I would say. You know, you hear little rumblings about, well, people aren't playing as much Limited, or do they really need to focus on it, or is that what's making them the money or whatever? And, you know, making what is effectively a Limited Pro Tour really stamps down, hey, this matters, and it matters at a deep competitive level. And then taking the time and effort to put the Powered Cube on Arena when they already had it on Magic Online and could have just said, just leave it there, it's fine. But they, you know, pushed and made these cards, got these cards onto Arena so that we could play Powered Cube. To me, Luis, it really, you know, signified a prioritization of Limited and evaluate the fact that they value it quite a bit.
Yeah, I would go with Powered Cube on Arena, not just because I'm a diehard cuber, but also because I think that impacts more people in a more meaningful way. Mm-hmm. The Limited Championship does have a lot of implications for people who aren't going to go. I'm not saying it only matters to the people going, but I think Powered Cube on Arena, that's the biggest win in my opinion. So we can, the judging committee can do with that what they will, but I guess Jeff's the tiebreaker if the two of us disagree.
Yeah, Jeff, what do you think? 2026 Limited Championship or Powered Cube on Arena for biggest win of the year for Limited players? Oh God, did we lose producer Jeff?
No, I'm here. I'm gonna go with Powered Cube, I think.
All right.
Yes.
Powered Cube wins.
Taste it, Marshall.
Congratulations. I'm going to be at this. Hopefully you're going to be at the 2020. Is it in 2027 actually?
It's actually in 2027.
Yeah. 2026 is when the qualifiers happen. Biggest loss of the year for limited players. I mean, I think the headliner one, which we've touched on, is the Spider-Man set, mainly because of the missed opportunity there. Right. I mean, I like Spider-Man. I read that comic book growing up. So like, this is one of the IPs that, you know, at least I would have the knowledge of the lore and stuff like that. And they did some really cool stuff using some of the original comic book cover artwork on some of the alternate art cards that were big nostalgia hits for me. And like, I was like, okay, there's a lot here, but the fact that it was just underrepresented, as we talked about before, and also the fact that it kind of stepped on Final Fantasy, which, you know, is, to me, it's between Airbender and Final Fantasy for the best sets of the year. And I just, like, at this point, I am still drafting Airbender because I really love it. But like, if the cube goes up in a couple of days, like you said, Luis, I will jump over and draft it. Like, I have drafted a ton of Airbender, but when Final Fantasy was going, I wasn't really quite done with it. And then it was like, here, you know, and it's like, if you remember, they actually brought back Final Fantasy not that long after. And I played it a bunch then too, because I just didn't quite have it out of my system. So it's kind of the 1-2 punch of, you know, being one of the worst sets for limited ever, right? Spider-Man, but also stepping on, you know, say a top 10, top 20 level limited set, you know, a GOAT tier limited set, and kind of being like, hi, I'm here now, and I'm, you know, draft me. And you're like, but I'd rather draft this one that was really good. So to me, when I look back, that was probably the biggest loss for limited players. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Spider-Man was pretty disappointing in a lot of different ways. And I think that it, especially, as you mentioned, interrupting Final Fantasy kind of highlighted that even more. So it was like you're at a restaurant, you're not quite done eating. Like this is like the best French onion soup you've ever had, and they come by and they just yank it from you, like, sorry, soup course is done. It's time for your main, and it's like steak tartare, but you're like raw steak. Like, oh my god, I can't. What happened here?
By the way, you're making a good run for Hungriest co-host early here.
It's true.
It's all food related.
Well, I guess to actually make the analogy better, it'd be, instead of steak tartare, it'd be just a plate of feces, because that's more akin to what Spider-Man was. But
yeah. So that was the one that stood out as the biggest loss. What about mechanic of the year? You know,
there were some good ones.
There were some really good ones.
I think Exhaust is a great mechanic, and you know, you premiered in Ether Drift. And we've seen it come back already, and we're going to see it more. But Exhaust, I think, is a very like bread and butter, you know, kind of like evergreen mechanic, which is good. It's a really good design to come up with it. But no one is ever like exhaust is my favorite mechanic, or at least very few people are going to say that because it's just not. It's a very functional mechanic.
It's a vegetables type mechanic.
It's like cycling or something like that. And then their job select, the Final Fantasy one where it comes with a 1/1 to win. What was tiered?
Tiered was the Blizzaga.
Oh, sure. That was just that was kicker with extra words.
It was kicker that you could just
Yes.
Yeah.
Warp was pretty neat.
I think Warp was really good, right?
Warp does stuff. Lander tokens, again, very, very basic, but I would expect to see those again. Void as a retread of Revolt's just fine. But the winner is one that played super smooth and was super flavorful, and they had 4 different ways to do it. If, of course, figured it out at this point, it was bending from the Avatar set. And I think of them, water bending is the best one. I think Convoke is such a fun mechanic, and it lets you be maximally efficient in a way that's very pleasing to Magic players. I think it's probably a lot of what it feels like to play a resource management game is what people like. But water bending, fire bending, air bending, earth bending. Earth bending, it's really cool how they kind of took away a lot of the downsides of making your land a creature in a really cool way. And then, Earthbender Ascensions in the current Magic Online cube, you ever use Earthbender Ascension onto a Wasteland or a Strip Mine, you get some pretty sick value. So I think bending is a masterful mechanic that we're not going to see again unless another Avatar set happens because it's just so tied to Avatar. But so even more of a reason to give it a really high grade because I think it's just a really, really, truly the pinnacle of their set design.
I think so too. I think it's nothing short of a triumph. Like to get 4 things to be balanced is already extremely difficult. I would have bet so much money that one of them just sucked. Right. That they tried and it just didn't quite get there. Right. It's like, that would have been totally acceptable. It would have been disappointing because, the way that these powers are depicted are fairly equally in the world where it's there. But that's hard. That's like, we're not talking about, I missed on a card, right? We're talking about a literal mechanic that touches many, many cards and they just didn't miss. They just hit on all of them. They feel flavorful. You can tell. I can see the meeting rooms, right? Like where they covered every, earth bending. Well, if it's exiled, it's still going to come back. Like we can't have people using removal spells on lands, right? We do not want that gameplay experience. Nobody's going to want to earthbend if their burn spell all of a sudden leaves you down a land. Okay, so they took the time to get that right. Airbending's even cool, right? Because it's kind of like a bounce spell, but it has different implications, and that's really interesting. It's not as punishing. Right? If you bounce a 5-drop, well, they get to replay it for 2 rather than the full 5. Also it's not in your hand. It's somewhere else. There's just all these neat little things that came up. But the thing that really stood out was the flavor and the gameplay checkboxed on all of them. That is, I am amazed that they were able to pull that off. And I tip my hat because that is very, very impressive. I think of the more evergreen ones, I'd love to see Lander tokens again.
Good, clean fun.
Those are really, really good. What was the biggest miss as far as mechanics or sub-themes or archetypes or whatever goes for the year?
We might get a little flack for this because, we got some pushback every time we talked about it. But I think spacecraft, especially look at the delta between how cool it is. Spacecraft. Mm-hmm. We got spaceships and how they played. And it was kind of like weak gradual vehicles, which already I don't want to get started on vehicles. So I think that spacecraft was a pretty big miss. And while I wouldn't mind seeing it back if they maybe changed the numbers some, it just was not that interesting.
Yeah, I feel like they just played it too safe. I think that's the bottom line. I totally get why if these things were too good, it would be really annoying. But they ended up, when we read them, we're thinking that they were like an overcosted effect, but then you also had this vehicle-ish creature thing that you got on the other side. So you kind of got some medium board presence, medium effect combined together. We gave most of them like a B, right? But they didn't play out that way. It felt like you're just getting kind of a D version of 2 separate cards, and that didn't really combine enough to be a thing, especially on like a shiny headlining mechanic like spacecraft. Card of the year. I picked Cryogen Relic.
I have no qualms with that one. Cryogen Relic is currently in my vintage cube, even though that's a bit of a pet
crazy.
Card. Well, did you know sacking this to Tinker, it makes Academy tap for more mana? You ever Displacer Kit in Cryogen Relic?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Need I say more?
Totally.
But Cryogen Relic, it's one of those like good on its own, good with other things cards that are always really satisfying to play. Where you could just play the card, it's great, but also if you sack it, you just feel like you're kind of getting away with murder, and you really are. Cryogen Relic was a really, really strong and fun card,
and it also had a big delta between how it looked on paper. We liked it in the set review, but that
was probably one of our better grades, honestly.
It probably was.
We did come out the gates high on that.
We did. I just would not have predicted it to be the best common in that format. Like that to me, we've had these kind of these rocks, that like, oh, you get a card and maybe you get another one, or you sack it and you get something, or, they're just these sort of incremental value. And then they usually would be something that would synergize with one of the archetypes or something. And somehow Cryogen Relic just went into every deck that could cast it and was really, really good. And for such an innocuous looking card, that's really impressive. Set of the year, Luis, it does have to come down to Final Fantasy and Last Airbender, right? Those were
the two sets for sure. Like I don't think there's even is there a distant third? Like what would be the third?
Ether Drift was really good, and Dragons was good too.
I have issues with both of those sets, so
I like Dragons a lot, but to me, it's definitely these two.
Dragons was one of the. It was like. It was a great first 3 bites that you don't want anymore.
Oh, yeah, there was a little bit of
my biggest problem with that.
yeah, that's true. To me, this breaks down into 2 categories, Luis. There's the my brain and my heart category. And my brain lies with Final Fantasy, recognizing that it is a truly excellent draft format, and again, the most popular / best-selling, however you want to frame it, it's the biggest Magic set ever. So that would be the pick that my brain would make. But my heart is very much with Avatar: The Last Airbender. Thanks to you making me watch the show and being able to kind of connect the dots, that really resonated for me in a way that no other set ever has, to be honest. This is the only one that I've ever, like, I was watching the show while playing. I realize, Luis, that it's really interesting because, I like to watch, like history documentaries sometimes, right? Like stuff comes up on YouTube and it'll be like, how do they build the pyramids, or why do we, was this guy real or whatever? And I love that kind of stuff. But the thing that you always have to face is that you're dealing with very little information. Archaeologically speaking, we'll dig up something and we have to kind of extrapolate a whole lot from a relatively small amount of material. And it's always interesting to me whenever they find artwork or things that are contextual to the time frame, because it's really difficult we can look at it and say that looks nice, but there's oftentimes they'll realize that there's jokes built into the art, that are like tongue-in-cheek things about a story from a book or something, and somebody will put it together, and it's just, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't even have seen it. And when I look at what they're able to do now with a Magic set, I feel that way. Unless you're here in it with us, like you've watched the show, or this is something that matters to you, and you understand Magic and the nuances of how the rules work and the game works, it is just really difficult to explain to somebody how you could take an IP and translate it to a game and have it somehow be more than the sum of its parts. It's not just pointing directly to things. It's, what you said about Aang and his journey and how he's adding these colors. And if you look at the arc of the show, that's what he does as he goes through. And it just goes down the line over and over and over, from simple stuff like, firebending, triggering on attack because they're an aggressive nation or whatever, all the way down to these little narrow things about the cabbage guy, or, these little call outs and all this type of stuff, that it is very much a, you have to be there thing. And for me, that raises my appreciation level of these things. And for that reason, I would give the set of the year to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah. I think that on straight up gameplay, I do think Final Fantasy is a little better. Mm-hmm. But if I take in the fact that Avatar, I love the IP, and I think they did an A+ job bringing that to life, Yeah, I just got to give it to Avatar. They're both great. They're both excellent sets. I enjoy them both quite a bit, and at the end of the day, Avatar is the winner for me.
Yeah, we're fanboys over here. Let's just be real about it.
We're not even fanboys of that much stuff, but this is one of those things.
This is one of those things. You know, it's a special IP, and it's and the job. I honestly wonder. I mean, we're not really qualified, but like, did they do as good of a job with Final Fantasy as they did with Airbender? I mean, I'd be amazed, but like that now I really get why that set sold so much if that's the case. But I kind of doubt it, mainly because of what you said, Luis, about this. There's a story arc with Airbender that's very set in stone. And honestly, if you would have told me how they approached doing the IP for Final Fantasy, where they treated, you know, every version is basically its own shop within Square Enix, it's like, it sounds like a total mess to me to try to even put that together. And yet, you know, they obviously checked the box for the Final Fantasy fans out there too. So don't feel bad if you're a Final Fantasy fan. We also recognize how amazing that set was, but our heart lies with Aang and The Last Airbender. It was a good year for Limited, Luis.
Yeah, it really was. Spider-Man was a lower low than most years, but I would say that the highs outweighed that significantly.
Yeah. 2026 is going to be really good too. We're going to be qualifying people for the limited championship, and you know, we've got the new format for the arena opens, which are now limited championship qualifiers or qualifiers or whatever. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff to look forward to, including we've got the Lorwyn thing, and then like a Marvel thing or something after that. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I believe so. But
I really want to know about the Marvel, if they're going to have to do the stupid thing on Arena.
It's got to have Omen Path.
We'll
see. I hope I'm wrong.
Let's just say I hope we're through the Omen Path already, and it doesn't feel like we are. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, not just for this show, but also for yet another year of exciting limited play. We've got a really great year coming up as well in 2026, and we're really happy to have you with us. If you want to find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis's LLC, pretty much everywhere. You can find everything related to the show at lrcast.com, including all of the episodes of the show, including, you know, the ones where we did sunset shows on all the sets that we talked about. Same thing with set reviews and all that kind of stuff. You can find it all over there. We want to thank our Patreon supporters for keeping us going. We really appreciate everybody who supports us on Patreon, and Ultimate Guard for their support of the show as well. That is going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week.
All right. So this actually is a couple of weeks out, kind of overdue, but I actually don't mind that, because what I want to talk about is the takeback that Seth Manfield got at the World Championship. And now that the flames have receded a little bit, people are a little less worked up over it. I think that's actually a good time to talk about it, because I really struggle with wrapping my mind around where the current philosophy is when it comes to takebacks, because I'm not here to try to like get people mad at Seth again. You know, he was working within the system that they told him. I wouldn't have asked for that take back. I think it was actually kind of ludicrous to do so. But the fact that he got granted it means that like maybe asking was a good idea, you know, from the perspective of he won that game. And certainly the judge telling him he could do that means Seth didn't like do something rules wise wrong. But how are we at a point where someone can make a play, the opponent has no response, you're thinking about what to do with the trigger, and then you just get to back all of it up? I wouldn't have gotten to do that at a PTQ when I first started playing, and it wouldn't even been close. And I'm not saying that we should go to, you know, early 2000s, 1990s levels of rule enforcement. I think that was also bad. But what is the philosophy where you can make a play, have things happen, and then rewind it? This is the World Championship. That did not... basically nobody watching thought that felt right. So like, I'm curious to kind of hear where judges are at. Like, at what point is my opponent held to a play? Like, right. Are they held to a play? Like Matt Nass had a thing that happened at a PTQ like a year and some ago. So it was like 2 years ago now. It was during March of the Machines. So there was the like the tie gam that when he attacks, the next spell you cast is doubled, right? It copies your next spell. So his opponent goes cast, a draw to copy of Tygam, and he's like, no, you haven't attacked it. You have to do that before, it's only if Tygam attacks. And they're like, oh, okay. And they call a judge, can I take this back? And the ruling was that yes, they could take it back, but they had an appeal and all that. And eventually it was ruled that the opponent could take it back. And then the opponent's like, well, actually, I'm just still going to cast this draw 2 and say go. Like they ended up not wanting to do it. But it's like, in this case, they cast a spell because they thought another effect would happen. Their opponent told them, no, you did that wrong. Like that doesn't work. You haven't done that. And they got to take it back. Why does that make sense? What is Magic not a game about trying to make a decision and then live with that decision? Like where did the take back stop? Why is it like this? Well, I'm not saying we should be like savage rules lawyers. I'm not saying that you take your hand off a land, you can't untap it anymore. That actually did happen to me at a PTQ. Complete BS. But the world that it seems like we're in, and I'm a couple years, like I haven't played a Pro Tour for over a year, so I'm a little out of date here. But even when I was playing like a year ago, like it felt like it was impossible to hold your opponent to something. Like at what point is it final? It feels like it never is. Is there like, am I losing my mind here? Am I completely off base? Like I don't understand how Seth got to take that back. How is that remotely close? At Worlds nonetheless.
And that was the second one too. He also, I don't want to pick on Seth. Yeah,
there was the Cavern of Souls counter thing where he got to counter, realized Cavern of Souls and went to take it back. And it's like,
and they let him take that back too. And that happened first. So, I mean, at that point you're like, well, I might as well ask, I guess. Right. It didn't feel right in the moment. And the part that it's into the weeds, but it's interesting for me, is I believe that there is some type of contingency around what was their information gained by making the play. And then if there wasn't, then maybe I could take it back. That seems to be at least part of the equation that the judges have to judge. But I really have to question if that is the case. If it's not, then I apologize. But if it is the case, the judges cannot be held responsible for that, right? Like the two things that come to mind are, one, I've commentated professional Magic for years now, and I have seen so many people think that they know what's going on in a game of Magic, and they don't. They think that they understand what's important or what's happening rules-wise or anything like that, and they're decent Magic players, but it's like that is not what's actually happening. Both of the players that are playing know I'm playing around this. I'm thinking about this. He's thinking about this. I'm playing around that. And they're on the same page, but you may not be at all. And, as a normal person, just like the judges are, I would not qualify myself to know exactly what's going on. There may be something I'm missing, that type of thing. And of course, the judges can't be expected to know all the matchups and all the interactions of every matchup to be able to accurately determine whether information could have been gained. The other thing is that your opponent not acting is information gained, period. If you put a spell on the stack and your opponent says, okay, it resolves, that is already information gained. So if that is the threshold, it should be, well, you did gain information because I didn't do anything, right? Which means I don't have a response at this time, or I may not have a response at this time. And that already is too much information to give up to extraordinarily talented and top level players at the Pro Tour level. So it was weird. I mean, I was in the booth and, Paul and I had our natural reaction to it. We were just like, what? And, we moved on. We're professionals. Like it's the judge's call and the match moves on. So we didn't harp on it. But I mean, you can hear what we said. We were both just like, wait a minute. Like that didn't feel right.
I'm not saying that the take-back Seth got, or both, either of them or both, were against the rules. But if they aren't against the rules, why are the rules like this? I'm not finding a compelling case for that. And, when everyone watching thinks, what the hell? That is a sign that those don't align with expectations. And I remember you asked me what I would have done if I was Ken, Seth's opponent. And I'm like, well, either he wouldn't have gotten the take back or I would have gotten DQ'd because I would not have just said, and that sucks for Ken. And part of it, he's penalized because he doesn't speak, fluent English, or at least cannot explain himself to the degree that you would want there. But I have a hard time seeing like how you couldn't make that argument that information was gained. And I don't want judges determining whether information was gained or not. And I don't think it's fair to players that they have to argue that point. Right. But that's where we are. So interested to see what people think about this one. And with that, we close out the year here with the Limmies.